Hello, and welcome back to the Authentic Creative, expanding our capacity to feel good. I am absolutely delighted to have one of my really favorite guests. I know I shouldn't say favorite, right? But I mean, she's been on here a lot, so you might have a clue. Amy Tangerine. I said to her that she is so magical one time when we were in person, and she was just like, that's my word. So she is a multi-passionate maker ever since she can remember. Amy Tangerine thrives in providing creatives with the space and tools to see the bright side of life. She has taught crafty workshops all over the world. I just saw one that she was doing, which looked incredible. Filmed tons of YouTube videos, which you guys can go check out. I'll put a link in the show notes. And consulted with awesome brands, including Disney, a little company called Disney, Apple, a little company called Apple, Avery, and more. Featured in publications like New York Times, Real Simple, and Forbes. She enjoys sharing ways to craft a life you love. Amy loves any excuse to celebrate and spread happiness. She spends a lot of her time in her art studio in Los Angeles, California, or hanging out with her husband and two kids. You can meet Amy at the intersection of creativity, passion, and purpose. You can see from her bio why she's here on this podcast so much, because there's such a huge intersection of the authentic creative and expanding our capacity to feel good that Amy is right at. She's right there, feeling good, being authentic, being creative, and liberating others to be in their authenticity and their creativity and their freedom, in their joy, in their magic, in their playfulness. And I love, Amy, the way that you have certain focuses of words that we've talked about in the past. And whenever I've seen you, you're focused on it's like all C words or all F words. Do you have a specific word bundle today that we could start with?
So funny. Well, that intro was amazing. I love talking to you. You are magical. You are seriously such a ray of light every time I've seen you in person. It just feels so wonderful to be here on Zoom with you because I really don't do a lot of Zoom. I think that
I'm
you're
lucky.
like the only person I accept this invitation to. I
Thank you.
really prefer in person. I don't have, the funny thing is you mentioned the F words, and I love bringing those up. And I haven't talked about those in a while, but there's three of them. And the guiding words that I've used throughout probably the last decade of my life are the three F words: freedom, fulfillment, and fun. And who doesn't want all of those? And when you mention
Yes.
C words, the ones that come to mind, I remember asking myself what matters most in 2019. So at the end of 2019, I reflected on what matters most and what I want to invite into my life under four categories. And they were all C words. I've added, I think, a fifth one to it, but if I can remember correctly, they were creativity, connection, community. Oh my goodness, of course I'm blanking. There was another one,
Creativity,
but
connection, community.
celebrating. Celebrate.
Okay.
Celebration.
Yeah,
Some
which is
type
in
of,
your
yeah.
bio. Yeah,
Yes.
celebrating. Any excuse to celebrate.
Yes. And then the fifth one that just came to mind as you were talking was contentment. Because
Oh,
I
I
don't
heard that
know
word
if we,
yesterday. Oh my God.
how funny. I just, when I think about contentment, it fills my heart, right? It feels like fulfillment in a lot of ways, but there's a different degree of harmony and balance and beauty that comes with contentment because there's a fullness to it.
Yeah, and it feels very settled.
Yes. And grounding,
Yeah,
right? It
yeah.
doesn't feel like you're chasing, which is another C word that I have
Mm.
experienced. And I have to remind myself that it's not so much about constantly striving and reaching towards this outer goal of fulfillment. The fulfillment and contentment we really can bring inside and feel that within ourselves in our own alignment. It
Yeah.
doesn't actually have to do with degrees of success or outside influences. And I make this, you know, gesture because a long time ago, my therapist told me, there can be chaos around you, but what really matters is how you're feeling in here. So it's really about the alignment that you can bring to yourself. And yes, there's always going to be chaos around you that's trying to grab your attention, that's going to try to drain your energy. But really, it's about finding your rhythm and
Core.
alignment inside your core and strengthening that core so that you remain grounded.
Yeah, and I've been in Kate Northrup's workshop, Good with Money, and she was talking about if you can't feel joy, contentment, abundance, expansion, whatever you're wanting to feel, here and now, with the chaos going around you, and this is not the exact wording she used, but if you can't feel it now, you're not going to feel it when you get to that success that you've told yourself is the moment,
True. So true.
right? It's just going to feel empty. So, can we feel it now? And of course, we can. Mentally, we know we can. But I love the fact that you light up my inner child so much with what you do, Amy. And that permission to play, to be authentic, to be creative, to be in the kind of unknown messiness is what we so deeply need for our healing. And it's the first thing that we put on the bottom of our list. So you're liberating so many people. And I think the reason I'm so attracted to you and the work that you do, and so many others are, is because our inner child is just thirsty for it. We just,
Absolutely.
we gotta have that creative expression, even if we think we're not creative.
Yeah, well, I first of all believe that everybody is creative,
Right.
right? Every single person on this planet is number one, a miracle, and I believe that everybody is creative and has gifts to share with the world, and they're unique gifts. I love how the focus has been so much around play, probably in the last 5 years. I've always tried to infuse fun into everything that I do, but I never had somebody or other people identify that I bring out their playful spirit or their inner child. And I think truly along my journey, especially in the last decade or so, I really have found that I wrote a book called Making Memories, and it was, aimed for ages 8 and up, all about practicing mindfulness, learning to journal and scrapbook, and finding calm every day. I didn't realize the gifts I was sharing to the world was really me trying to get back in touch with my inner child and opening up to that wonder, that awe, that playfulness, that spirit of, hey, I can do this or I can try this, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt for me to try a new method or a new product or a new way of painting and just experimenting and playing with supplies and granting other people permission to do so because not that my parents didn't encourage me to use my supplies. I don't remember them saying, oh, you have to save that, right? But
Mm.
for some reason, whether it be ancestral trauma or whatever it
Mhm.
is, I had this thing where I didn't want to use up my paints or my very favorite pen or my very favorite, even like eraser. I remember these erasers that I used to collect. And I would not use those favorite erasers. I would use other erasers that were good because I didn't want to waste. And I say waste like this with quotes
Yeah.
because I just didn't have that mindset of, oh gosh, we do live in abundance. And guess what? You are actually taking something that's meant to be used. Watercolors, for example. I mean, I've used up numerous sets of watercolor paints, and thank goodness I did. I almost built a whole side business, playing with these very inexpensive watercolor paints. And I want people to know that they can create abundance from what they have. It's such a beautiful, I wish that I was given that permission. And you look, I think I was. My parents supported every creative thing that I did, every creative endeavor. But when you're a kid or even when you're a teenager, you don't necessarily have the funds to buy all the art supplies that you want. Even in college, I remember this project that I was at Georgia Tech and I had this large painting project to do, and it was an acrylic project that was, I want to say 30 inches by 30 inches. And we went to Sam Flax was the art store. And I had to make the most of my paints. And
Mhm.
so we would mix colors, and I would go instead of buying the containers that they had at Sam Flax, I don't even know how much they were. Instead of buying the containers, I know that they were expensive to me.
Mhm.
We literally, our group, we would go buy baby food on sale, eat the baby food like applesauce. We never bought the vegetables because they were gross. We just bought the fruit purees baby food in
Uh-huh.
those glass jars,
Yeah.
eat them, and then we would rinse them out and mix our paints and save them in those jars. And I
Ah,
remember it so vividly
wow.
because we just didn't want to, waste money on these containers that they had designed for the paints, and we needed them to be airtight, and we were resourceful. We were
Mhm.
scrappy.
Mhm.
And I understand that there's a time and place for that. But I also want people to know if they're investing in their art supplies, they don't do any good sitting on your shelf or
Yeah.
sitting in a bin. They
Mhm.
need to be thrown onto the canvas. If you're watching this, you can see the canvas behind me, and it looks like a total mess. But guess what? It made me so happy spending the time mixing different mediums and creating this big painting. It's the biggest painting that I've ever done that's not a mural. And I think that the reason I have it hanging up here now, it just brings me so much joy to look at as a background.
Yeah.
And there's little phrases that are in typewriter that are up
Oh.
there. So if you get up close, you're encouraged to touch it. You're encouraged to interact with it. It's not a painting that you can't touch. And that's what I wanted. I wanted people who came in here to be able to do that. So
One
all
of
of this
my
to say,
favorite, Amy. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
yeah, all
All
of
of
this to
this
say
to
is that
say.
it's like a big invitation to play. Play and
Mhm.
do something that makes you happy, that brings you joy, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yes, 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 yes. Two things that are coming up for me as you're speaking is one, I'm just re-remembering that one of my absolute favorite passions that I did for years and years and years, that was my favorite thing to do was collaging, ripping out stuff, or not ripping, but like cutting out magazines, saving the magazines, cutting things out, and gluing it all together and getting it all just in the right order. And that was one of my absolute favorite things to do. I don't do it anymore because I get frustrated with the process of like laying it down and putting it in the right spot and like having time to tape it. And then I end up just shoving it in an envelope, putting it aside for later. So there's that, which is so fascinating that you're just talking to you is bringing that up for me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, little girl needs to have her time to do the collaging. And then the other thing that comes up for me is during COVID, because you were talking about 2019, coming into 2020, there was a lot of time, obviously, a lot of us had it home with our kids. And I got all these Etsy things, supplies for the kids. We were going to make candles, we were going to make stained glass things, we were going to do these like wooden puzzle block things where we paint like so many different things that I got for them to try and be a good mom. And I was so like making soap and bath bombs, and I was so perfectionistic when it came to doing it that they didn't want to stay. They would like do it for a little bit
Oh.
and then they would be like, I don't want to do this anymore and run off.
Hmm.
And so isn't that interesting that that perfectionism, because you know you were talking about like letting it be messy and the joy that you have in just seeing the blotchy messiness of it. And I know with some of your books, you'll encourage people to rip out the pages and make it messy on purpose. And so much of our conditioning to feel safe, to feel good, to feel excellent, and get those 5 stars is to do things perfectly. And when we're trying to do things perfectly, we can't enjoy ourselves, and we might not even finish.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when I just taught two events, I taught workshops in Ventura at Craftcation Conference, and then I had to leave early and get on a plane to go to Houston for the very first little craft fest. And I got in at 1 a.m. and I had to wake up at 8 a.m., set up our little booth, and then I taught, I think it was 11 a.m. Um, and it was
Wow.
so interesting because no matter where I go, I always bring this up. And I'm interested in knowing how many people at home feel this way. Is that, that perfectionist tendency when people are in a room with other people who are creative souls as well, there is a tendency to not even want to raise your hand when I ask if there are any perfectionists in the room because
Mm.
we are so self-conscious of our own, ways of blocking our own blessings, right? I have this painting thing that I did over here in those cheap watercolors, by the way, that's framed and it says progress over perfection. And I
Mhm.
also believe what kids know more than we do because we kind of grow out of this or we don't believe it because of outside influences. Your kids know that guess what, mom? The process is way more important than the outcome. The
Yes.
process of connecting and taking that time and making a bath bomb. And so, what if it isn't perfect? It's a bath bomb, it goes into the bathtub. Really, a candle gets burned, right? It
Yes.
does not
Yes.
matter. I really have, and this is something that I have to continually overcome is my tendency to want to be a perfectionist or trying to make it perfect.
Right.
There's
Like
no
I
such
remember you
thing.
putting the stickers on your Apple laptop, your new
Oh
one, the
yeah.
blue
Oh yeah.
stickers, and you were
Oh
like,
yeah.
this was a little bit scary for me because it was permanent once you put it down. Is that why it was scary?
Yeah, I was committed. And I think that's what happens. You were talking about collaging with magazines. And what stops you from actually gluing it down is kind of committing to it, right?
Yep.
But really, especially when it comes to paper crafting, and collaging is paper crafting. And that's one of the first things that I fell in love with was cutting up Sassy Magazine, 17, I'm showing
Yes.
age, YM, all of those
Yep.
magazines that I got the subscriptions for. One of the big things that I loved now that you're mentioning that is instead of recycling them, I actually gave them another life, another meaning, another thing of value by cutting them up, upcycling,
Yeah.
and pasting them down onto big poster boards. What I like to make now are mini vision boards within my planner. And I think that that's kind of a lesser commitment. Maybe you would
Yeah.
like to try
Yes.
grabbing those scraps and putting them in a notebook because it
Yes.
takes up less space and it doesn't feel as committal. Okay, so one of my dear friends just told me this. I was in Ventura a few weeks ago at her beautiful home on the water, and we were crafting away, and we had this dollhouse project, and we were talking about this tendency for perfectionism and how it actually strains our capacity to create.
Yeah.
And she was so funny because she remembers, she brought this up, and I didn't remember it. She remembers when I was flipping through one of my journals and she pointed something out, and I was like, oh, I don't like what I did there. And then I literally just flipped the page.
Hmm.
She's like, it was that easy for you to simply flip the page. I didn't focus on it too long. I just turned the page because at the end of the day, I have finished so many journals and notebooks. Is every little page or little part of it perfect? Heck no. No way. In fact, there are so many things that I look on here and I'm like, whatever. But really, if I didn't get the memory down or the thing down on paper, I would have nothing to show for it. And then it doesn't bring back the positive memories of actually creating it. Now, for the most part, because I don't have a formula, I am a little bit messy and I give permission to be messy
Yeah.
because it is paper. Guess what you can do? You can slap a sticker on it, you can cover it up, or you can literally flip the page. That is a chapter in our lives that happened. That's a season. Trust me, I still have plenty of memories stuck into a drawer that aren't documented in books. I don't go back and berate myself for those. I admit that as a professional scrapbooker, my second child, who was born in November of 2020, does not have a single scrapbook. Okay? And that is okay. It is okay. It is all right because she is not berating me for it. I am not hard on myself for it. Look, we can be so hard on ourselves for
Yeah.
other things, okay?
Yeah.
Like, this is not part of what brings me joy. And trust me, I used to be so hard on myself in my head that when an occasional negative comment would come up, let's say on YouTube, I mean, very occasional, I feel very blessed to have the most amazing people who watch my videos and feel inspired. And maybe for those who don't, they click away as opposed to spending time leaving a negative comment. But I remember one of the negative comments that came through and then that jarred me was actually, oh, well, so you're just so happy all the time and da da da, your life is so amazing. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
I never want to come across like my life is perfect. It certainly is not. But I do want to focus on the happier moments. And yes, paper crafting and silly stickers makes me happy. And I get a little giddy. I get that childlike giddiness. I see your smile there. It's so big.
Oh, seeing
And
those sticker rolls, just like,
oh,
oh, I love
right?
it.
Doesn't that just like
Yeah.
bring so much joy?
Mm.
And I was in person with people and I was like, you know what the best part of this is? Is that you don't even have to pay for it. You can just cut the stickers that you want. And then you
Oh,
get permission to use them. And
yes.
whatever it is for you that allows yourself to get out of your own way and just play, make sure you try to do that, even for 10 or 15 minutes, whatever it is, right? Because you don't need a
Yes.
permission slip, but if you need one, here it is, right?
Yes.
Permission granted.
Because it's so connected to everything. And with our all of our adulting, we can think, what does this have to do with anything? But actually, I imagine, Amy, that at a lot of the things that you do, that you facilitate, there is some tears. There's a lot of healing that's happening. People are releasing that contraction, that constriction. And speaking of healing, I wanted to talk today about your curiosity of, and this is going to seem like a huge pivot for you guys, but Amy is interested in the Akashic Records. And so, Akashic Record reading, for those of you who don't know, is something that a lot of people don't know what it is, but Amy happens to be interested in it and curious about it, and I happen to be teaching it for the past 8, 9 years. And I happen to say to her, I think I'm going to do an Akashic Record reading retreat. We were already kind of talking about maybe we'll do a retreat together because I had invited her to the one that's coming up this weekend. And she's like, what if we do one something else? And so it just all mystically, magically aligned that I'm going to have the next Goddess of Light retreat in Mount Hood National Forest, Oregon, at this incredible artsy Airbnb that has like all this cool art on the wall. It's like a lofty kind of space. I showed it to Amy. She was like, yes, 100% yes. And I just keep imagining us at this incredible, like, so all of the windows are huge and just surrounded by the Mount Hood National Forest. And I'm just thinking about us opening the Akashic Records, which is through a sacred prayer. And then what that allows us to do is connect with a team, our what are called our masters, teachers, and loved ones. Through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, we get permission and we get to access this infinite, etheric, incredible wisdom, this infinite wisdom. And whilst with this infinite wisdom, this magical, mystical space open, so our hearts are open, our minds are open, our bodies are soft and relaxed because we'll do some breath work and we'll have some cacao ceremony and we have a hot tub there that's like an indoor outdoor hot tub. We're gonna play. We're gonna play with Amy's artistic permission. You know, she's going to give us this permission to play and show us her supplies, and we're going to work with it whilst having the Akashic Records open. So I want to give you an opportunity to share with me why you came upon the Akashic Records, why you're curious about them, maybe ask me questions that you might have that our listeners might also have.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I don't think it's random at all because I've actually had my Akashic Records reading done back in, I want to say 2016 or 17. And the reason I heard about it was because my therapist at the time brought it up. And she connected me to somebody who did it. And I believe he's in Europe.
Oh,
And he just needed some information from me, some basic information like birth date and time of birth and location, and some basic information. And within, I think, 3 weeks, he returned like a 25-page typed document of my reading and like family of origin or spirit origin. I can't remember the name of these things, but I remember him detailing the archangels that are watching over me that I can call on and the groups of origin and all of these things and my main lessons and then the secondary lesson. And it was so fascinating and so dense that I remember reading through it and feeling so held, feeling so connected to the divine in a way that I just did not, I couldn't really fully process at the time.
mm,
Every now and again, I try to do it every year around my birthday, which is in October, and I look back on it and I read through it because I will pick up on certain things and lessons that really resonate at the time. So one, I mean, I will just share this because I think it's so spot on, and I did not like it or agree with it when I first read it, but it's so spot on. It's like one of my major lessons in life is to surrender.
mm,
And as a, recovering control freak, it's really deeply hard to do that.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Totally
in
relate.
the surrender, I have been given the most beautiful gifts.
Yeah.
And I recognize that I have really no control over these outside. forces. I have very little control over even the things that I do and come up with and think that I'm orchestrating or pulling together. And it's so beautiful, you know, being a witness to, gosh, what a life lesson that I keep learning.
Yeah.
Yet it also comes with when I do fully surrender, it really comes with the biggest gifts I've ever received.
Right. Agreed.
So I think that my fascination with the Akashic Records is, oh my goodness, if we have this ability, which I believe everybody's creative, and you might believe that everybody can tap into this well of wisdom, or that maybe some people, do you think that some people have an easier time, or is it just like the willingness to learn? What is it? Can
Yeah.
anybody learn this?
Yes. Thank you for that. Anyone can learn this. It's really, do you feel curious, right?
Mm.
So I think that's with across the board with so many things is what's your intention? Like, are you intending with a pure heart to access this beautiful, pure love, infinite source? Because some people have concerns about religion. This against my religion? Some people have concerns about, am I special enough? Am I good enough? Am I spiritual enough? Um, and there was a time not that long ago where it was considered to be only for really highly evolved, highly spiritual, like monk type people that had access to the Akashic. And then Dr. Linda Howe, who's written about 4 or 5 books, and I've interviewed her on this podcast if you guys want to go back and listen. She's like considered the quotes mother of the Akashic. She really brought the Akashic to the forefront of, I don't want to say popular culture because it's not really popular yet. There's still only a handful of books on the Akashic. There's, yeah, some YouTube stuff. Edgar Casey was like the quotes father of the Akashic. He was called the sleeping prophet. He was really like able to get into this really incredible detail for people, but he went into a trance when he did it. So he was basically like asleep and he had his woman friends that would write everything down as he was saying it. And yes, incredible accuracy. But that's not really what we're being taught today. We're really being taught here we are, fully conscious, fully awake, with our hearts open, with our intention pure to access this through a prayer. And so, yeah, the first thing everyone can do, and anything that I do, I teach is we ground, we get into present time with our body, and then we use that intentional prayer, which anyone can say. And then what I do is I help people to start to discern. Like everyone kind of knows like what intuition is. Everyone kind of knows what common sense is. And we get a sense of some like psychic hits sometimes, those things that we just kind of know like, oh, someone's watching me and I could just tell, or someone's about to call me, or I feel like we all have these different clear senses. And so it's not psychic, but it can sometimes feel like it's psychic, or it can feel like a lot of people feel like, including myself, I'm just making this up. Once the Akashic records are open, oh, am I just making shit up? But actually, that's what it feels like. It feels like I'm just making it up because we've been, most of us, conditioned and invalidated to
Mm.
not listen to our masters, teachers, and loved ones. And what happened for me was I was doing, I've been practicing Reiki for 26 years. And so I was working on a client and I started getting information, but there was no predictability to it. So I wasn't able to like tell the client every single time, here's the information. But because one of the mantras, one of the Reiki symbols, actually is an access point, intentionally an access point for the Akashic realm, which I didn't know that I had been using that I was popping into the Akashic Infinite Wisdom and channeling this information. So I came upon this incredible woman, Helen Vonderheide, who's been on the podcast, and she's going to be on one of our panels again. Amy, you've been on a lot of our panels, but we started doing trades Reiki for Akashic, and she really gave me that like foundation of, okay, here's the ritual, here's the practice, here's how every single time you can predictably know that you're actually in this Akashic field, that you're actually able to perceive, and everyone perceives differently. So Dr. Linda Howe, she perceives mostly just in like a knowing.
Mm.
And then other people, Amy, we're going to find out how you perceive,
Mm.
but it'll be interesting to see. Do you perceive through looking out your window and seeing a bird and knowing, because you'll just start to trust, and you probably already have this muscle there pretty quickly for yourself of like trusting because of the type of person you are, but like, I know when I see that bird that that means this. I know when I see that color, that means this. So it's very individual for each person that's reading the Akashic. And there is a thin, like plasma, if you will, surrounding everything, every living thing. Even our homes have an Akashic record. A lake has an Akashic record. A mountain has an Akashic record. Plants, the grass, our pets. Of course, our children, we don't open the records of anyone under 18, so we're not going to open our kids' records, but we can open our own records and we can look at the relationship and like, how can I best help this child? And I've done lots of that for people. So it's really fascinating. And just like with Reiki, the first thing we learn is how to read our own Akashic records. So we'll practice distinguishing the difference between our intuition and our common everyday kind of just knowing, and what is that piece that we're channeling through the Akashic realm. And one of the ways that you'll know is it feels different. You're perceiving it differently. It's like, I don't say that word normally. I don't normally think of things in animal images. Certain people, when I'll read their records, it's all animals. Or sometimes it's like a lot of cartoon images, or it's sometimes very like everyday wording that I'll end up using. And I'm like, oh, this feels like I'm just having a conversation. And then other people, when I talk to them and open their records, we're talking about aliens and we're talking about Palladians and we're talking about like past lives. And of course, a lot of people know that the Akashic records are something that can access our past lives. And some people are really good with that. They're really just going to naturally gravitate towards attracting clients or just being really good at details about their past lives. And the way that I work and a lot of people that I've worked with work is it's not that's not our central focus is on our past lives. If it comes up, we can look at it, we can access it, but it's not about like, let's get into the nitty gritty of every single past life. Therefore, we can, you know, get stuck in it, right? It's really, if it happens to come up, something that we can clear. And then a lot of it is about being in present moment, clearing things energetically, and we're going to do that in the class. And then future possibilities. So we don't do anything set in stone. We really look at like, here's, do you know, like in the Marvel movie, right? Where their Doctor Strange is like seeing every single possibility. It's like that, where it's like we can start to see all sorts of possibilities that we have free will with. And we can look at those and, or we can look at like the energy of three different things that we're making a choice about in present time. And we can say, The energy of this while I with the Akashic Open feels really exciting and alive and vibrant and fun. The energy of this feels a little denser and heavier and not as interesting. And so you can start to like kind of identify things more from this like zoomed out perspective. I think of it like you're up in the airplane looking down on your life. And
Hmm.
that through the eyes of the Lords of the Records, it's like that heightened perspective. And sometimes there'll be clients where they'll share something and I'll be like, Siri, me, personality Siri, would not agree with that. I would not recommend this particular thing that they should go like leave their husband and go off with this other man. But the Akashic wisdom comes through and I'm like, "Oh, no, you're actually supposed to go see that person." Yeah. And I'm like, "Okay, great." So it's really this practicing of trusting what comes through. And that's super fun to just start to play with that. So we're going to do that in September. And then at the end of September, September 28th to the 30th, Amy and I are going to play with you guys in the Akashic and keep learning whatever there is to still learn and have so much fun. And then there'll be a couple of Zooms afterwards where there's integration and any last questions, a little bit more practice we can get in at the end. So I know I just like waterfall flowed out a million pieces of information. I got really excited. So I'm going to be quiet and let you talk to me about anything that stuck out for you.
Well, the funny thing is, I didn't realize, because of my experience with getting the reading from years ago, I didn't realize that there were other methods and ways of sharing the channeling, or you didn't even use the word channeling, but once the records are open, I didn't realize that there were other ways of sharing it. So it's really interesting to me because since my father passed away in September of 22, I have been getting, oh, this is so crazy, but it's my experience that I have been getting a lot of messages from animals,
Hmm.
a lot of them. And mostly, with him, it's through squirrels. So I think he sends me squirrels because he had a love-hate relationship with squirrels while I was in high school and beyond, and it's just really funny how squirrels have been delivering me certain messages.
I love
And
it.
then after my mother-in-law passed away 9 months later, she passed away the day before Mother's Day. She had 4 kids, and she uh, lived in the same place, in the same city her whole life. And it was really interesting because she came to me as a flying grasshopper. Did you know that grasshoppers can fly?
Mm.
Yeah, and I thought it was a butterfly. And it was so interesting because I didn't get the message right away. But after some time, it's sitting with it and realizing that grasshoppers do indeed fly. And it was what I thought was a butterfly getting chased by a bird. So the animal thing is very strong. And it was so interesting because I literally saw it and I was like, I was walking my cousin's dog and I said to Lula, "Are you seeing this? What is happening?" And it followed us about half a block down the street. And finally it landed and I looked at it. I was like, "You're not a butterfly. What are you?" And it once again went up and it was being chased by this bird again. And then it finally landed again and I got a video of it. And I was planning on sending it to my best friend. And I crossed the street and not even like 2 minutes later, my husband called me saying that his mom had passed a few hours ago. And I was like, whoa. And I didn't tell him at the time, but I was, of course, listening to what he was saying and his because it was in Pittsburgh and so like the details of the next few days and hours and days and what the plan was
Yeah.
to make it to her
Yeah.
funeral. And
Yeah.
so then I go back and I had to Google it. I had to send the video to my best friend who said that I've never seen that before, but they usually don't fly that long. Like they usually, jump and sort of fly and then land. But this was floating like a butterfly. And later on, I got the message because she had a stroke in 2011, and so her left side was paralyzed, and for like the last, 10 over 10 years. And
Mm.
I was like, oh my gosh, her message was, look at me, I'm free, I can fly. And it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. And I just love how it sounds crazy to some people. And, but I believe it. I
Yeah.
believe it fully that her spirit came to see the kids and
Hmm.
came to tell me because she knew that I could hear it
Yeah.
eventually,
Yeah.
what the message was.
Yeah.
I'm free, I can fly. It was so beautiful. Anyway, so I
Mm.
love that you brought up the animal thing because I didn't realize that that was part of the Akashic Records and opening ourselves up to that sense of knowing and that sense of intuition and that sense of claircognizance or clairvoyance. I don't even know what it is. What is it when you can hear animals?
I don't know the word for that, but there's like five different clairs. But two things. One is I was flipping through this book and I've interviewed Dr. Stephen Farmer on this podcast. He's amazing and it's all different animals and what they mean. And so I'll use that sometimes in the Akashic. But then also, Amy, is after a few years of opening the Akashic, I started to get confirmation that I was in the Akashic realm by seeing deer. And so deer are just such a beautiful sign to me. And it's pretty much every single time now. I'll open the Akashic and there's the deer. So for you, it'll be so interesting because certain people, it's, and for you listener, if you end up coming to this, certain people, it's like a little, they'll feel their third eye. There's an activation when we start to open the Akashic.
Wow.
There's a vibratory up leveling so that we can be sensitive to it. Some people will see like a typewriter where they're just see the words typing out in front of them. And then another thing that if you guys like oracle cards, one time I was doing an Akashic reading and I just pulled an oracle card, for example, like this one, just a forest. And and it had a mirror in the card that I pulled. It wasn't this one, but it was similar. It had a mirror and it was in a forest. And I was looking at the card the whole reading, and the card image kept morphing, and I kept seeing different images, and it was telling a story. And that's how I did the whole reading, was just the story. When I used to live in LA, like I was saying, I would look out the window. I don't know why I keep saying that to you. I think that might be your thing. I was looking out the window and I would see an airplane go by and I would know, okay, that means this, that means take flight, that means freedom, that means let go, whatever it was, surrender. And we just start to know that a kite, if we see a kite, if we start to see a red bike, we start to have this language with our team, our masters, teachers, and loved ones, start to bridge a language. And so the more we open the records, the more we get that alphabet of what everything is. And then we get this shorthand and we can start to just tell the story. Because it's sort of like, I like to call it like that we're detectives together. If, say, I'm reading your Akashic Records, that we're detectives together and we'll start to tell the story together. It's sort of like spiritual therapy as opposed to fortune telling. And so you'll be like, okay, here's this, this, and this. And I'll be like, what are the causes and conditions? What's the thing that's never getting better? We'll start a lot with that. If people don't know what to ask, I'm like, what's the thing that's never getting better? What's the thing that's keeping you up at 3 a.m.? And let's look at it together with the Akashic Open in this like really grounded, safe, loving space. And then I can start to see the causes and conditions with you. And here's the thing is the person being read, whether it's you reading your own records or you reading someone else's records, we're going to learn both. You're not going to see more than you're ready and willing to see, right? And they're not going to allow you to see more than you're willing and ready to see. So you don't, no one has to be afraid of that. You know, it's like with all these healing modalities, you're not going to go deeper than you're ready for. So that's the safety you can just have that and know that, like, oh, okay, whatever you're ready in that moment when we open the Akashic to remember, then you get to remember it. And it's so relieving. And we talk about, and we'll do this in the classes, we talk about dignifying. So it's like dignifying the person being read, that you're seeing them at their highest potential and highest level. And
Mm.
sometimes for people that are just getting their Akashic records read or reading their own records, it's like very almost like, I don't know, want to say jarring, but like unfamiliar to
And I was
feel
gonna
that
say,
kind of unconditional love.
oh yeah, I was gonna say unnerving
Yeah.
because they're not used to it, right?
Yeah.
Unfamiliar. Yeah, that's so interesting. Oh my goodness. Well, now, can you do me a favor? Did you just pull that card? It said surrender to spirit.
Yeah, I did.
You
Yeah.
randomly just pulled that.
Yes.
What does it say at the
Yes.
bottom? Can you read
It
it?
says once you've done everything you can to achieve a goal, turn the situation over to the divine. Let spirit work its magic for you. And it's a beautiful image of a sun glowing through a forest with this multicolored forest with this like flowing river.
Okay, I told you at the beginning of this when we started talking about this in general was that my number one lesson is to surrender.
Yes,
And it's
yes.
so interesting that you would pull that card.
Surrender. Yes.
How I all I think about, so can you give me a different phrase? Because all I keep saying when any of this synchronicity kind of comes up, I'm like, yeah, this is crazy. I just say like, how crazy? This is so crazy. And I know there's a better word for it, but it feels, I mean, it
I
feels
just think of
crazy
the
in the best
Beyonce
way.
song, like, got me looking so crazy right now. I mean, why is it wrong? Like, I
It's
think
not
it's
wrong.
okay.
I just
It's
wish there
not,
was a better
yeah,
way. You know, because
yeah.
I think some people have crazy as like a negative term, and I don't in my mind. I really just cannot think of another word because sometimes I'm so in shock
I
that,
think it's perfect, is what I'm saying.
okay, okay, and then I'll just reference the Beyonce song because she's perfect. If any human being is perfect, it's definitely her.
Yeah, I think as long as you don't have a negative connotation when you're saying it, then it's perfect. Like,
Yeah, I think
I
that,
hate how we get so hung up on like, is this the most spiritual word ever? Like, who cares? It's just like what feels good to you.
yeah, I think the reason it has sort of a negative connotation to it is because I think that there are crazy things that have happened that are negative, right? But
Yes.
the synchronicity and the magic of me sharing with you that I can hear squirrels telling me messages, like that is just crazy. Like there is no other word for it, right? But and it's in a positive light, I promise.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's so interesting because I can think of another instance where I was literally telling somebody, another relative of my husband's, about the grasshopper story.
Hmm.
And, I don't know that she didn't believe me, but she was like, okay, Amy, all right.
Mm-mm-mm.
And I promise you, not even a minute later, a grasshopper comes flying down. We were walking to pick up my son from school, comes flying down, and it was the biggest one I've ever seen. Like the biggest grasshopper that flew, like literally was flying and then landed right in front of us.
I mean, yeah.
And so, yes. And so it was one of those things. So, what would you say to people who are a little bit skeptical of whether they have this ability in them or not? Let's not go the religious route. Let's just,
Yeah.
a person is like, well, I don't know if I have it in me to open up to this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it needs to be a calling, right? You will feel the pull this feels interesting. I feel drawn to this. And if you don't feel the calling or the pull, that's okay. It's not your time, or it might never be your time to be into the Akashic Records. It's a very specific thing to be curious about.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Something that came on my radar recently that I think a lot of people are learning about now more than ever is human design.
Yes, yes.
Why would somebody gravitate towards human design rather than Akashic? And how do you think that those two, not, I don't want to compare them, but because I think more people have heard about human design than Akashic Records, what would you say?
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that question. So, and just to finish out the Akashic thing is in terms of being skeptical, is I just want to say that I think skepticism is healthy. I think if you're not a little bit skeptical of things, of new things, maybe you're a little too open. You- we do need to think for ourselves, and we do have a healthy, protective filter that should be there. Like, yeah, let's question all of it. And what I say is bring your questions, bring your skepticism to anything that you're doing or learning about. I think what's scary to me is if someone says you're not allowed to be skeptical. That's a red
Oh,
flag for me, right?
yeah.
So I have doubt all the time. I'm like, is this really, am I really in the Akashic again? I think I am. And then something will happen. I'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't deny that. Like what you're saying with the grasshopper. So bring it all the questions and then start to develop the relationship with your team that you get to say to them, like, show me the grasshopper. Show me, show me a different way of knowing this because I'm not getting it this way. Can you show me in another image? Can you show me in words? Can you show me in colors? Can you show me with smell? And ask them because they want to work with you. They want to be there for you. They want to communicate with you. And then the part about human design, I think human design is so fun and interesting. And I'm actually giving a human design reading tomorrow. Human design is amazing because it gives us an inroad to understanding ourselves better and to seeing perspectives about how our energy works that we wouldn't necessarily understand. And there's a liberation in that. When I first told my husband that he was a projector, he started crying. When I first told my son Phoenix, who just turned 12, that he's a generator and started describing the kids' uh, explanation of being a generator, he got up in my face and he was like, see, mommy, see? So there's something so validating and liberating about understanding ourselves from a perspective that our everyday personality doesn't normally see. And with the Akashic, I think, yeah, it's a little bit maybe more mystical, right? Of an expansive perspective. So there's a little bit more of the unseen, a little bit more of like, can I trust this unseen information? But there's so many ways in which we work with the unseen that we just take for granted that everyone gets a phone call. How is that phone call coming through? You can't see the cord. There's so many examples. So I think that people that are drawn to human design also are potentially drawn to Akashic. There's an overlap. And I think it's people that are curious about self-evolution and self-growth, and people that are curious about understanding things from a different perspective than their everyday 3D personality.
I love that. I love that so much. It's so interesting because you said well, you didn't say these exact words, but kind of like show me, this sign or after it made me think about how after my dad passed away, I told you about the squirrels.
Yeah.
And last summer, we were in Japan. And, we were there for probably a week and a half or 2 weeks, and we hadn't seen any squirrels. And I said to my son, because he has witnessed all of the signs, and I make sure that he knows that, he is being watched over and being, he has many angels watching over him, or however you want to say it,
Hmm.
and that he can actually ask for signs himself. If
Yeah.
he's feeling a little unsure about something, he needs a little bit of support that's in his heart. So I said to him, Pop-Up hasn't sent us any squirrels lately. Maybe there aren't any squirrels in Japan. We haven't seen any. It's so strange. And we had been to like three different cities, and I was like, you know what? I just want something really funny that we will know that it's him.
Hmm.
And so he's like, okay, that sounds good. He's like, what do you think it'll be? I was like, I have no idea. And so my dad always had this thing with bugs. He liked bugs, and I did not like bugs. I was very scared of bugs. And it was really interesting because we were feeding these koi fish at the hotel. And this is like the next day after I had this conversation with Jack. So Juniper wanted more fish food. And I was like, okay, you can go inside and get it. And I took a picture of her saying, please, can you do it? And I was like, fine, I'll go inside. And we go to the door, and on the glass door is this bug. And it's brown with green on it. And I had never seen anything like it. I was like, oh, look at this bug. And I wasn't scared of it because it was obviously outside and it was out of my way. It didn't seem like it was going to jump on me or anything. So I opened the door, go inside, ask for the fish food. And as I'm exiting to go back to feed the fish, this guy comes out, and he's probably in his 50s, and he's dressed in a suit, and he works at the hotel. And I said, oh, excuse me, can you tell me what this bug is? And he's like, oh, these bugs, we put our laundry outside to dry, and my wife gets mad because these bugs sometimes stick to the clothes, and then we bring them inside. And you know what they're called? He's Japanese, right? His English is very good, but he couldn't think of the name of the English version of it. But he's like, oh, you know what? I think it's called a smell bug. And I was like, a smell bug? And I was like, oh, interesting. And we look closer, and then I think, oh, is it a stink bug? It's like the prettiest stink bug you've ever seen. He's like, yes, that's it. And he looks closer, and he goes, oh, look at it. I've never seen this before. There is a heart on the back. It
Mm.
had a green spot in the shape of a heart. And I was like, oh my goodness. And this man in a suit does this little giddy dance and says, you've made my day. Thank you for showing me. I could not even believe it, right? I mean, when have you seen a stink bug with a freaking heart on its back?
Never.
It is crazy, right? And it's just so incredible. I was like, oh, that's probably Pop Pop sending a bug with a heart on it, sending his love. And it was so beautiful. It was just so incredible to have that interaction with the gentleman there too, and for him to say, you've made my day. And it's like hard to describe the demeanor of somebody who, is in a suit, very professional, and he just did a little happy dance. It's just very unlike a typical Japanese man in his 50s. And it was just so beautiful because I was like, that's something my dad would have done too. And you never know how you're going to impact another person just with a simple interaction like that. Literally, we were just walking out, and I could have, not asked him, and he could have not told me, and we could have not had that interaction. But because of that inkling to ask him what kind of bug it was, we have this beautiful story unfolding.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that's what's so beautiful about you, Amy, and also what you're inviting us into is this mystical, the magical. Like, it is this, like, let's look for clues of love. Like, let's look for clues of communication, back to your word, like connection. Like, Because as we know what we focus on, we're going to find more and more and more of. So if we're focusing on looking for these mystical synchronicities, we're going to find these mystical synchronicities more and more and more. And we're going to strengthen that communication with the other side. And it sounds like you have a really strong communication with the other side, and your desire is to strengthen it even more through the Akashic. And it's going to be really fascinating also to see the expression and the creativity that comes through for us when we have the Akashic open and we're working with your supplies. Because I think there's a level of freedom and channeling that can be crystallized that is going to be really exciting and surprising and healing and heart opening. And then people can take that with them and have that proof of this tangible thing of like, oh yeah, like I channeled this and here it is and here's the proof. And I can look back on it and remember it. So
Oh,
I
so
think
powerful.
we'll wrap up there because you told me that
So
you wanted
powerful.
to end at 12, right? And we're over our time. So,
This is so beautiful. And you know what? I just pictured the project that we're going to create, and I'll talk to you about it afterwards.
oh,
I
okay.
just envisioned it, and I'm going to see what you think because I do love the fact that we will have tangible proof and evidence, and then we can take that and continue our journey with it. I'm going to ask you about it after.
So, guys, I invite you. If this conversation felt enlivening, if this conversation made you feel more curious, if it sparked something in your heart, if you really are wanting to have more of a connection to your creativity, your playfulness, your inner child, more healing in your life, more mystical, more magical, more access to perspectives that you wouldn't normally have access to. This retreat, I'll put a link for it in the show notes, and you can reach out to me or Amy if you have questions about our particular things that we're experts in. And I cannot wait to empower each of you. I cannot wait to empower each of you. There's at least 7 spots left right now. There's a number of women who are already like, yes. So grab one of those spots as when you can, as soon as you can. You will, I'm keeping it intimate, so you will have your own bed. So I love you guys. I love you, Amy. I'm so honored that I get to do this with you. Thank you. It's
Same.
very
Thank
exciting.
you. It's going to be so magical. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys, keep expanding your capacity to feel good, one breath at a time. See you next time.